Sound is on. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, what is wrong with the lighting in here today? What is going on? I don't know. Okay, hey, hello there, folks. Here we are for another wee live stream. I'm just complaining about my lighting. I have no idea why it's everything's really grainy. I don't quite know what's going on and what's changed, or am I just always this grainy and never noticed? Well, hopefully you can all hear me, if anyone's even listening, because you know what? I didn't bother announcing this. I just thought I'd come on and do something a bit fun. And, you know, I've been doing a lot of storytelling and a lot of events for years. And I'm learning a really interesting thing. Now, this is just a tiny little gripe I'm going to have, but also a complete compliment to everyone on my Facebook page. So I've been doing these Facebook Lives on my Facebook page, but I've also been going on something called the Socially Distant Festival, which is a festival set up specifically for performers. And the idea is this, that we will go on and do a 15, 20-minute set, have a tip jar, and basically it's a way to hopefully allow us to make a little bit of money and entertain the masses while we're doing so. Now, I've done a couple of videos. And I've done more videos on my Facebook page. And you know what I'm going to say is this, folks. I have had something like over 10,000 views from the couple of videos I've done on the Socially Distant Festival. I have had numerous friend requests, lovely comments, and I appreciate it all because followers, etc., are really valuable as well because they help spread the word. But one thing that I do find hilarious is I've had one tip. Over 10,000 views, one tip. And then I come and do my Facebook things. And I'm not going to tell you how many tips I've had or how much I've had, but all I will say is to everybody who has joined me on these live streams, thank you. Thank you very much for supporting me, for listening, for enjoying them. And for those that have been kind enough just to throw a little bit of a tip my way, just for the fact that I'm doing this, I really appreciate it because you guys, with some of these videos, maybe about 200 views. You'd be lucky if I've got 1,000 views in all the videos I've done on my Facebook page. But percentage-wise, for tips, you guys have rocked it. So thank you so much for supporting me and keeping me going, and also allowing me just to do this. This is kind of the only performance outlet I have. As most of you know, I am a full-time performer. This is my only income. So I actually really appreciate the fact that some of you have made the effort to come and listen to me and also just put a wee donation. This isn't me begging for donations because that's not the purpose of my Facebook page ones. There is always a wee tip jar there if anyone feels free. But what I've been saying on this Socially Distant Fest is, hey guys, buy me a coffee. You know, it's like, send me $1.50 to buy me a Tim Hortons coffee. Don't like buy me a Tim Hortons coffee because I'm sorry, no offense, Canada, but oh my God, that stuff gives me the bulk. It is not good coffee. Sorry, Tim Hortons, but it's just not, okay? It's not. Steep tea, double, not too bad, but your coffee, it's pretty minging. My wife works with Starbucks, and even their coffee in my mind is pretty bitter. Second cup, they do a decent coffee, I've discovered. But you know, it's that sort of thing. Just, you know, any artist that you're following, I'm going to say this now. If you're enjoying performances that people are doing through the social distance or anything else, even just think about it, send them $1.50, send them $2 and do the maths. Imagine now, like 10% of that 10,000 plus viewing sent me $1. That means basically I don't need to worry so much about the next 5 months of unemployment until things start picking up again, until my gigs start again because everyone's shut down. Think about that in the terms of other artists. Now, I know we're all having difficult times. I'm not going to lie, you know, everybody, it's one of those things, you know, you've got to be thinking, like, I mean, thinking, why would people give me money? Because they're struggling as well. So I totally understand it. Hence the reason these Facebook videos aren't about money. These are just about pure me having fun and giving you a little bit of enjoyment back. But the option is there. Wait a minute. Do I have a hat in here? I'll do my best. Puss in Boots. No, don't worry. Don't worry. Now, I'm not seeing any comments. I don't even know if anyone's actually on this. I think I saw a like from Jonathan Hardman. If you are watching, Jonathan, how you doing, fella? Lovely to be following some of your posts that you're making about you and your family. And I hope you're all keeping very well in these odd times. I did like your post-apocalyptic outfit that you posted, which basically is your Highland Fraser outfit, which, let's be honest, if it comes down to it, I am storming the world in my kilt as well. There is no ifs or buts. But today, I actually thought I would try something really weird, and I'm looking at this camera and thinking this might not work as well as I wanted it to, because a long time ago, I was very lucky when I was doing tours and walking tours in Edinburgh, as I was sitting in the Scottish Storytelling Centre one day, and a gentleman came in and asked about walking tours. Hey, Samantha, how you doing? And asked about walking tours. And because I was having a cup of coffee or tea, probably, because I'm a bit of a tea Jenny, in all honesty, I was having a cup of tea in the cafe there. They directed this person to me, and he was a lovely gentleman, and he was there with a group of American tourists. He himself was one, and they did these sort of annual tours to wonderful places. This big group of almost like a family. They all knew each other. There was loads of them, and they asked me if I could. Hey, Ronnie, how you doing? They asked me if I could basically give them a couple of tours of Edinburgh. And of course, I was delighted to do this. They wanted to see Edinburgh Castle and do other stuff. And then they invited me to also tell at a couple of their evening meals, because they were staying in, it was the Caledonia. Oh, fancy, fancy schmancy Edinburgh Hotel. And they asked me to come and tell at a couple of their evening events, and I did. And I would like to think we became quite friendly with each other. You know, we all got on really well. I remember one evening after doing the sort of storytelling stuff, but it was in their final days. Patricia, hello, how are you doing? All the way from Washington. Lovely, thanks for joining us. And I remember after one of the events, it was really good because, you know, they were plying me with food and drink. And, you know, as a Scotsman, free meal, free booze, we'll never say no. But basically, they invited me down to the bar after. And I like to pay my way. It's one of those things, you know, I don't like being... It's a weird thing. I get a wee bit uppity when people are like trying to pay, but I always remember this because it made me laugh, because it was one of those moments that even I had to kind of like doff my chapeau and say, okay, you guys win. When they turned round to me and I went to buy myself a whiskey, and I just got the shout across the bar, your money's no good here. And I didn't get to buy a drink all night, and I think it was about 4, 5, maybe 6 in the morning. I left that hotel. I was in a very wobbly way, and I'm not entirely sure if I even went to bed that night or if I literally just went, found somewhere else to have a coffee, and then went and did my walking tours that day, which would have been incredibly amusing. That's how fuzzy my memory is of this. But this group of people were fabulous. And then something really weird and wonderful happened. I got an email, and they had invited me over to America, over to California and San Francisco. First time ever. And so I got to hang out with a lot of them over there, and it was fabulous and lovely. And they showed me about the place, and I really thoroughly enjoyed catching up with this wonderful group of people. And I've still got them all over my Facebook page. And this video is kind of dedicated to them too. It's been a long time now. It's been well over... wait a minute. I'm having to do some personal mathematics. 7, 8 years, maybe even longer since I've actually caught up. But we sometimes communicate through Facebooks and say hello. So this is a wee bit of a kind of dedication to those guys for being so fabulous, so wonderful. But one of my favourite memories of this event in Edinburgh, I'm walking down the Royal Mile, and hopefully some of you have been to Edinburgh and you know the Royal Mile, and you'll have seen those people, those dreadful individuals with those hideous beasties under their arm. You know, like some bloke has wrestled an octopus out the ocean and then inflated it and decided to call it a musical instrument. The bagpipes. Now, I love bagpipe music, but when you work in Edinburgh, you get sick to death of it, because the guys that play on the mile don't bring out their good pipes. They don't really tune them properly because they know the humidity, the damp air of Scotland's going to mess them up. So they kind of play them the best they can, but it creates a rather awful caterwauling in the skull. And I'm walking down the street with this group of guys, and what year did I come to? Sorry, I have no idea, Leanna. You know what? That's too much whiskey over the years has befuddled this old brain of mine. But yeah, I'm walking down the street on the Royal Mile with all these guys, and one of the gentlemen's names was Yori Chisholm. Now, Yori was this young, fairly handsome lad, you know, and we were just chatting away, and we walked by this piper, and I made this comment, and anyone that knows me knows that I basically sometimes just say stuff and don't care, and then go, "Oh, did I just do that?" And this was one of these moments. I looked at Yori, I looked at this piper and went, "Aren't they the most god awful sounding things you've ever heard? I can't imagine anybody wanting to play anything like that." And Yori just kind of looked at me and it slowly drifted away. And I'm like, "Oh, what did I say?" And then one of the other gentlemen, Ed, came up beside me and we were chatting away. And he happened to have heard this. And he said, "Calum, do you not know who Yori is?" And I'm like, "No." He says, "Oh, he's a world champion of bagpipes at the moment." So here's me basically belittling bagpipes in front of the world champ. And I'm glad to say Yori didn't hold it against me. A lot of the guys played bagpipes and they all just chuckled about the fact that I had just put my foot in my mouth as usual. But spending time with those guys was amazing. They were wonderful. Their wives, the families, everything. It was just a really nice experience in Edinburgh. And then, as I say, over in America when I got to hang out with a few of them. And I will always cherish those moments because it's one of those great things about being a storyteller. Just you get these crazy, crazy things that happen. However, today, in honor of Yori and Ed and all those guys, I was actually thinking I'd do something different. I had my glasses. Look at this. I got old. And all of a sudden I realized I was getting headaches when I was trying to read or do stuff on the computer. So I went and got myself a pair of reading glasses, which means when I put them on, I can't see anything beyond 2 feet away from me. But I thought what I'd do today, instead of telling a story, I'm going to read one. And the problem is the light in here is absolutely gash for doing this, I've discovered. But we're going to give this a go. And I don't think I actually need my glasses for this. But this is actually something that Yori put me onto. And it's Wee Ghillis by Munro Leaf. Now, if you don't know Munro Leaf, it does actually say at the back of this, folks. Where are we? Somewhere in here. There's oodles of paper. He was an American writer, illustrator, and if I remember correctly, he's one of the guys that's actually he's responsible for Ferdinand the Bull, the story of Ferdinand as well. So this is actually a really fun little kind of kids family book called Wee Ghillis, and it's kind of awful because they've tried to do Scottish in it and it makes me laugh a bit. But here we go, folks. Are you all sitting comfortably? In the great tradition of the UK story, Jack and Ori, are we all sitting comfortably? Are we ready? Well, let's begin. I love this book, actually. I've read this many times. I do a few story book narrations. I'm trying to break into all this stuff, but I haven't actually narrated this book. I've read it once or twice. So this could be an absolute disaster because I don't know if I'm actually any good at reading while trying to do stuff live. Okay. Wee Ghillis lived in Scotland. And look at that lovely picture. Wait a minute, I'm trying to get these. Look, see what a beautiful hand-drawn image of supposedly Scotland we have here. Yes. Probably what I should have done is probably like taking photos of this book before I tried to narrate it for you. Okay, so Wee Ghillis lived in Scotland. His real name was Alistair Roderick Craigalachy Dalhousie Gowan Donny Bristle Mac. But that took too long to say. So everybody just called him Wee Ghillis. And there's the bonny laddie himself. His mother's relations were all lowlanders. They stayed down in the valleys and raised long-haired coos. His father's relations were all highlanders. They stayed up in the hills and stalked the stags. Wee Ghillis didn't know if he wanted to be a lowlander or a highlander. His mother's relations all thought that his father's relations were foolish to run and climb and creep around the hills, stalking stags. His father's relations all thought that his mother's relations were very silly. What is that all about? Were very silly to drive and call and milk their long-haired coos. Wee Ghillis didn't know, but he watched them both and he was cheerful and amiable. Right, so reading this book, I'm just going to have a quick pause. Amiable is the weirdest word in here for this particular story. It just doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't fall in line. I don't know why I've got really, really Scottish at the moment, because most people who know me know that I do the BBC Scots quite a lot. You know, that very posh, sophisticated Scots. But anyway, there's another delightful little image for you of the family. I would say that's the Highlander family. Wonderful. So for 1 year, he went to live in the lowlands with his mother's relations. Every day, he rose early and ate a large bowl of oatmeal, or, as we would call it, porridge. Then he drove the long-haired coos out along the valleys, and at night he called and called them and drove them home again in time for his mother's relations to milk them. I will just add that it actually just says cows here, you know, C-O-W-S, but I can't say that properly. To me, it's always got to be, if you're talking about a Highland coo, it's basically C-O-O-O-O-O-O until you decide to finish it. Coo. Once he was late in getting them home. Then the relations all asked him what had kept him, and he had to tell them that the cows wouldn't come when he called. We've all had that problem in the pubs. Then the relations all said that he didn't shout loud enough and that the cows couldn't hear him through the heavy mist. So every night, when the mists would come down over the valleys, Wee Ghillis would shout a little louder than he had before. That was fine for his lungs, and by the end of the year, they were very, very strong. And there is a fabulous dot image. I actually love this one of Wee Ghillis shouting loudly for the coos. On the first day of the new year, Wee Ghillis went up into the Highlands. Every day he rose early and ate a large bowl of oatmeal with his father's relations. Then he set out walking and crawling, running and creeping all over the hills, stalking stags. He would hide behind thistles and sit on the heather, and sometimes he would have to be so quiet for hours at a time that you would have thought he was a stone. And there he is, pretending to be a stone. Not a very effective looking one. Once, while he was stalking, he sighed a big sigh because he had stayed still for so long, and the noise that it made frightened a stag so that it ran away. Then the relations all told Wee Ghillis that he didn't keep quiet enough and that he must learn to hold his breath. So day after day, sitting among the thistles and on the heather, Wee Ghillis would hold his breath longer and longer to keep them from sighing, so he wouldn't frighten the stags. That was fine for his lungs, and by the end of the year, they were very, very strong. So year in and year out, Wee Ghillis would take turns calling the coos in the lowlands and stalking the stags in the highlands, and all the while his lungs grew stronger and stronger. I mean, look at that bonny laddie. Look at the size of his ribcage now. His lungs are mighty fierce. I love this book, actually. It's a cracking wee book. At last the day came when he must make up his mind and decide forever which to be, a lowlander who called cows or a highlander who stalked stags. Bright and early in the morning, there were 2 loud knocks on his door. When he opened it, there stood his Uncle Andrew from the Lowlands and his Uncle Angus from the Highlands. Gillis put on his kilt in a hurry, and away they went out into the morning. These images are actually absolutely fantastic in this book, and I can't show you them all because I'm just not quite getting the camera to work for me today. They walked and walked, not saying a word, down through the valleys and up over the hills until they found just the right spot for deciding. Then his Uncle Andrew and his Uncle Angus stopped and stood very still. They turned to Wee Ghillis. He was exactly halfway up the side of a medium-sized hill, not in the lowlands and not in the highlands, just in the middle. And he had to choose forever. Gillis looked down, and Gillis looked up. Then he looked at his uncles, and they began to talk. First they pleaded, and then they begged, very softly and very quietly, one at a time, and then they politely waited for each other to finish what he had to say before the other began. But still, Wee Ghillis could not decide. So his uncles' voices grew louder and louder, and they didn't wait for each other to finish talking anymore, but shouted and screamed and yelled until they jumped up and down and stamped their feet. It's a very, very energetic image of them stamping their feet here. I love it. You could hear them shouting all the way down in the valleys and all the way up in the hills. Suddenly, his uncle stopped jumping up and shouting. Suddenly, his uncle stopped jumping and shouting because a very large man had come up behind them. He was carrying something brown and big, but he put it down beside a rock, and then he looked at Wee Ghillis, and then at Uncle Andrew, and then at Uncle Angus. When they were very quiet, he sat down on the rock. He picked up the big brown thing that looked like a sack with sticks on it and took a deep breath and puffed his cheeks and shut his eyes and blew into one end of it with all his might. But nothing happened. He shook his head sadly and tried again, but nothing happened. And then he was very sad, and he said so. He was almost ready to cry because he was a bagpiper, and he had... Sorry, I thought they just went through my head there. He was almost ready to cry because he was a bagpiper, and he had just made these fine new bagpipes to play on. But he had made them too big, and he didn't have breath enough to blow them. Uncle Andrew was sorry for him, so he tried to blow them, but he couldn't. Uncle Angus was sorry for him too, so he tried to blow them, but he couldn't. So they all sat down on the rocks and were sad together. Ah, Wee Ghillis wished that his uncles would ask him to try, but they didn't. So he just stood and looked as though he would like to. After a long time, the large man noticed him and shook his head slowly. But because Wee Ghillis looked so wanting to, the large man asked him if he would like to try. Wee Ghillis said, "Aye." And so he did. First, he took a deep breath the way he used to when he was going to call the cows on a misty night in the lowlands. Then he held it the way he used to while he was sitting very still stalking the stags in the highlands. Jesus. And then he blew with all the force in his very, very strong lungs. The bag filled up and let out a screech through every one of its pipes, and the large man and Uncle Andrew and Uncle Angus fell off the rocks with surprise. and you need to see this picture. It is just absurd, but so good. So the large man taught him how to make music, and now Wee Ghillis is welcome down in the lowlands and up in the highlands. But most of the time, he just stays in his house halfway up the side of a medium-sized hill and plays the biggest bagpipes in Scotland. And that is Wee Ghillis. Now, some of you might be thinking, Calum, you clearly can't read, but I promise you I can. Having gone through this little book and trying to read it now, I've just realized it's like really some of the way that they've done it. There's, shall we say, a lack of punctuation. And because they've kind of done this weird bit where they do little kind of break up lines, it means that it's really hard to work out where to kind of put tone and kind of passion into it. But Wee Ghillis by Munro Leaf. Hopefully I won't get sued for doing that on my Facebook page. Because, you know, I think that one is a public domain. Now, if not, you know what? I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it for entertainment. However, there is a tip jar there if anyone does enjoy these videos. But guys, I just thought I would do something different because, you know, I've been doing all these stories for the last few days, and I thought I would give this a go. I loves that book. I loves that book. Wow. You can tell I'm not with it today. I love that book. It's just such a fun wee thing. And of course, it's written by an American guy. So you kind of got to forgive some of the language and some of the over-exaggerated. As for example, Wee Ghillis is in a kilt. And the problem is they're all wearing what we call dress kilts. And technically, kind of looking at how it is, it gives you the impression it's a wee bit older. So it gives you the impression that probably, like, for example, if he was a lowlander, he probably wouldn't be wearing a kilt anyway. You know, and the Highlanders, yeah, they wear kilts, but most of them wouldn't be wearing a kilt every day either. But you've got to forgive it because, you know, there's this beautiful image of Scotland that we have, and it is very strongly enhanced by a lot of American people with their Scottish heritage, I will be polite and say. Particularly the ones that are related to Robert the Bruce, Mary Queen of Scots, or William Wallace. But we won't get into that on this one. That could be a topic for another story session or talk. But folks, I just want to say thank you for joining me, Samantha, Ronnie, Patricia, Liana, Zoe, Helga, everyone that's made a comment. Thank you very much for joining me today. There's just another little fun video for you. It keeps me kind of active, keeps me focused on trying to make sure that I stay on top of things, because I do have a terrible fear that come August, if any of the shows actually happen in August, if they don't get cancelled, I'm going to walk out onto a stage and kind of go, blah, because I'm going to be so out of practice. I'm still worried about that anyway, because I'm going to have to do it in front of a live audience instead of a video camera. So that could still go horribly wrong and could actually be a great show in its own right. But anyway, folks, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to try and figure out the lighting in my studio and what has gone wrong with it, because looking on my camera, it looks like I'm in a fog at the moment, and I just can't figure out what's happened. But enjoy. I will see you all soon. Please do share these videos. Do push them out there. Let people see them if you're enjoying them. Recommend, you know, I don't expect, you know, but recommend them to tip me. You know, buy me a Tim Hortons steep tea double. I feel awful doing this sort of. I feel like I'm back in the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, kind of doing a hat line or something. You know, my walking tours, when I did this, I was also like, now, folks, these tours are free, because they were. I did free walking tours, free by donation. So I always used to say, at the end of the tour, you pay what it's worth. And that's kind of what it feels like, but in a very weird and wonderful way, because I can't even like pull on your heartstrings by being there. I can't actually like stare you down and go, you know, if you don't pay, I know your face, because I don't know your face. Everyone's face is a Logitech webcam at the moment. But folks, love you all. Thanks very much for listening. Have a wonderful day, and I will probably be back online tomorrow. Or if I get bored later tonight, because that could be a possibility.